So these are the sorts of risks that the Act is concerned about, that you start to quantify, that you start to mitigate against, and demonstrate that you're doing so. So your building safety case report will summarize, what you're doing at this moment in time. It will identify the key risks that you've found. It'll say, look, I'm missing some information, but the very fact that I know I'm missing the information means that I'm in control of the risk. I know there is a risk there. It's when I don't know what I don't know that there's a problem. So that's the sort of building safety case report that we will develop for our clients to make sure that it's clear to the building safety regulator. We know if there's a gap, and we've got a plan for filling that gap. Now there's a role here that is not it's not a statutory role. This is not mentioned in the Act, but I can't help but feel that a role like this is needed, because there is no way that a PAP or an AP is going to be doing all of this work that I've described to you. I suspect that they're busy doing all sorts of things, and they won't be involved in writing procedures and processes around how they're going to manage risks, how they're going to report to the building safety regulator. They might sign these things off, but they're not going to prepare them, I would suggest, okay? They're not going to be involved in day-to-day with the professionals that are coming into the building and helping to identify the risk, helping to mitigate the risks. So I think there's probably someone in between, and I'm calling them a building safety manager, that will deal with all of those day-to-day things. And I think there's two questions that person needs to be asking or answering. And the first question is, can the safety risks be identified, clearly identified, okay? And the second question is, can evidence be shown for how those risks are being managed? And I think that captures what they've got to do, and therefore capture in the documentation and capture in the building safety case report ultimately, okay? Just lest you thought that, you are left alone to do things and come up with how you do all of this, managing safety risks by yourself, I want to let you know that there is a competency framework out there that helps you manage building safety risks. So be aware of PAS 86. I hope you know what a PAS is, by the way. People are always surprised when I tell them what a PAS is. It is actually a British standard document, okay? So it's a BSI document, but unlike a BSI, which takes years and years to develop, a PAS is developed very, very quickly. So if a PAS is developed when they haven't got time to do a proper British standard. So yes, it is a document that you use as a code to follow, but it's one where, they haven't had enough time to do all the work that they need to do a proper British standard. So, please, I know that people see, PAS 998 as the be all and end all, but the bottom line is it's a rushed document at the end of the day. It's put together quickly so that there is something out there for people to follow, okay? I think it's called a publicly available specification. That's what PAS stands for. Just be aware of these little things, but be aware that you're not alone. You've got a bit of documentation out there that can help you understand, identify, and manage building safety risks. And it goes through things like risk management and the golden thread documentation, things like managing change, things that you should be aware of and understand. So do be aware of that document, and if you can get hold of it, maybe utilize that to help you with your managing of buildings. Now, I thought I'd give this bit of an overview so that you've got a sense of how things operate strategically. And I hope this is helpful. So since the Building Safety Act 22, you've got this new building safety regulator that sits under the HSE, okay? And from the building safety regulator, there's these three I'm going to call them committees. committees or panel. There's a resident panel, and that is to make sure that that robust framework for residents is in place, and that making sure that when residents complain, that's been dealt with, etc. And there's learning from that, learning best practice that's maybe spread from the building safety regulator. There's also this building advisory committee and a competence committee, and this is all about making sure that materials are to the quality that they need to be, because there has been question marks about the materials that we're using in our buildings. And B, it's about the competence of the individuals in this industry, making sure that people are qualified and capable of doing the job that they are required to do. On the right-hand side here, the inspectors, building safety regulator is still trying to recruit people to assist them, to assess buildings, etc. Like I've told you already, they do have quite a backlog of buildings. You then have below that your PAP, your principal accountable person. This is the person that is mentioned in law. You've got also an accountable person, but this person here has responsibilities under the Act that he or she cannot delegate to somebody else. Now, don't get me wrong, the tasks associated with making sure that risks are identified, making sure that you've got a digitally held repository of golden thread information, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, you can delegate the tasks. What you can't do is delegate the responsibility, the legal responsibility that's placed on that person or company in the legislation. So please be aware of that. They can't delegate those responsibilities. And you remember the list that I gave you, they're there to identify the risk. They're there to make sure that they're reporting information back up to the building safety regulator. They have responsibilities, various things, and they can't say, well, so and so didn't do that. They're putting place. They have a responsibility to make sure that it is working. You can't go back to the building safety regulator and say, well, it's his fault. You are responsible under the law if you are a PAP.